What does it mean that God remembered Noah? Hello and welcome to the Rooted Together podcast, a podcast which aims to root you in Christ through His Word together. Today we're in Genesis chapter 8 with an episode entitled King Over the Flood. You see, God remembering Noah is about God through the narrative of Genesis acting toward people. And that sentence is very purposeful because when we say that God remembered, it's not that God forgot or needed to remind himself, but this is this anthropomorphic language, this putting in narrative God's emotions and thoughts, because that's the only way we can really understand God. And so Israel, or really actually Noah here, has been floating around for quite some time. Chapter 7's the flood. Chapter 8, they're waiting for God to act. But the time has now come for God to do something. So it says, God remembered Noah. And Noah and the creatures with him were never really forgotten, as I said before. But the time had come to do something about them. The time of judgment was over. God was done with the flood. Nothing would happen if not for God's actions. The flood would have continued, but God now steps in and the king now acts. Just as God didn't leave Noah alone in the flood, God would not leave Israel alone in the wilderness. And so we ask, why is Genesis chapter 8 in the Bible at all, aside from telling you what happened to Noah? Well, remember, Moses is telling Israel, who is waiting on the edge of the promised land, getting ready to go in, and he's reminding them that our God is the King, that our God has remembered us, and he will be with us, and if he wills something to happen, it will happen. You are not alone in the wilderness. For them, the wilderness was sort of like their ark. They were floating, waiting for God to act. In fact, they had been there for 40 years. Why had they been there for 40 years? They knew where the promised land was. It was judgment. Because they had sinned, they did not trust God, and so he made them wander for 40 years, not lost, but barred from entering the promised land. And now he's preparing to act. They're preparing to go and to take the promised land. And this story reminds them that he is the king, and if he wills them to go, they will go and they will succeed because he already rules the land to which they're going. So Israel must listen to God as they go forth into the promised land. Now, jump again into our lives. You are not alone. God sits as king over your life. Wait for him, and when he speaks, obey. Because when God does something as king, it will be done. Now, our main idea of this whole chapter, if we could put it into one sentence, is this. God sat as king over the flood, and when the time came, he rescinded his judgment and commanded all living things. And yes, I did take some of that from one of the Psalms, because it's a really good psalm. Our real key verse here is in 8:15, and that is, then God spoke to Noah, because it's everything I just talked about. When God spoke to Noah, God was acting. You know, sometimes we miss the profound nature of such a simple verse. We might think that's just too simple of a verse to really highlight here. But remember, as I said earlier, God spoke. He didn't have to speak. He could have remained silent, but he spoke and Noah listened. God spoke to Israel, and he speaks to us today as well. So take time and marvel at the divine being in relationship with you and with me, and listen to him through obedience. And in doing so, you enter into that relationship with God. He will be with you, and when he acts and you listen, you will not fail. God's plans will come to pass. Only trust in him, listen, let's say wait, listen, and obey. I'd like to thank you for listening to Rooted Together, and I look forward to seeing you in Genesis chapter 9 next time. I'll see you there.